Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a very special PC3 Media interview. I am Johnny Clumpy, and I am joined by
Devon Alsman.
And our special guest today is Len Kasper, the current voice of the radio for the Chicago White Sox and former Cubs broadcaster for WGN and NBC Sports Chicago. Len, how are you doing this fine Wednesday morning?
I'm doing great, guys. Nice to be with you. And summer has arrived in Chicago, and both the White Sox and Cubs are in town this week, which is kind of rare, but a lot of fun in a two-team town.
Yeah, the weather's really warming up. I mean, today it's supposed to be a little wet in the Chicagoland area, but the summer is here, definitely warmed up a little bit. But Len, we'd like to get right to it. Devon, you have the first couple questions.
Yeah, Len, we just wanted to ask you about how you got into the career. What kind of inspired you and what kind of got you into the career of broadcasting?
Well, when I was a kid, growing up in a small town in mid-Michigan, this is right at the dawn of the cable age. Every game was not on television. In terms of the local broadcast, the Tiger games in Detroit and in Michigan, they were over the air, and I would say about maybe 45 to 50 games were televised. So if you wanted to follow a team every day, you really had to listen to the radio. And Ernie Harwell and Paul Carey were the longtime radio tandem for the Tigers, and I just fell in love with listening to those guys. Then when we got cable, WGN had Cubs baseball every day. TBS in Atlanta had the Braves every day, and for a sports fan like me, it was such a cool thing to be able to watch games from some other place. And so I just fell in love with baseball, and I played it through high school, but I always thought being a baseball broadcaster would really be an amazing career. I went to Marquette University in Milwaukee and majored in public relations, but got a lot of experience on the student radio station. And, when I got out of college, I had made some contacts locally and ended up at the flagship station of the Brewers and the Packers and Bucks in Wisconsin basketball and football. And that was a really great experience for me, but that bug was still there that I really wanted to do baseball, and finally got an opportunity to fill in on television with the Brewers in 1999 as Matt Vasgersian, their TV voice, started to do some national work. So once I started doing some television games, and I really wanted to do it full time, and got very lucky that got the Marlins TV job in 2002. Was there for 3 years, including the 2003 World Championship team. Then the Cubs job opened when Chip Caray left for Atlanta, and was very fortunate to get that. And I did that for 16 years. But I always still had that thought of being the radio voice of a team. And when the White Sox job came open during the COVID year, I just decided that it's another box I wanted to check. So I've been lucky that I've been able to do both jobs, radio and television, in terms of baseball. But going back to the initial part of my answer, the radio stuff really grabbed me at an early age, and I just feel that radio and baseball really connect very well and are great partners. And I think it'll always be that way. I think it's the best sport to experience on the radio, and I'm really fortunate that I'm kind of being able to get back to my roots as a baseball fan.
And you're talking about how you started with the Brewers and the Packers, talking on a sports show about them, and we were kind of curious about it because now your last two teams were both Chicago teams, and they're kind of the complete opposite. I don't know how much you pay attention to the Bears stuff as well, but being in Chicago, you also just see this rivalry for football and baseball itself. How have you kind of seen this rivalry now that you're in Chicago?
Well, it's kind of similar to Detroit and Chicago, Chicago and St. Louis, right? Chicago and Minneapolis, Milwaukee and Chicago, Milwaukee and Minnesota. Everyone, has their rivals. And I think when you're working in sports, your loyalty lies with the team you work for sure. In terms of other sports, I still follow the Detroit Red Wings are probably the team I follow the most. I never covered hockey, but I grew up a big NHL fan, so I still follow them. Obviously, the Blackhawks had a great Stanley Cup run, which I was able to watch a lot in person during that 8 to 10 year stretch. So I'm just a sports fan in general, but yeah, there's a great rivalry. I think the football rivalry, just the NFC North, right? The Packers, the Vikings, the Bears, and the Lions. It's pretty intense, and it's pretty cool to have a couple of different perspectives, having been in Wisconsin for a long time and now being in Chicago for the last 2 decades and having grown up in Michigan. So, yeah, that part of it is really, really cool.
Sure. You've got to experience the whole NFC North, really, of like sports cities. You got to experience a bunch of the rivalries. But as you talked about earlier, you grew up listening to WGN, and then you ended up being able to call games for that station later on in your life, which when you commentated with WGN for the Cubs, you got to witness the 2016 World Series win. And we just were wondering, how was that experience to be able to call another World Series champion in your career?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. The 2 seasons were pretty different. 2003 with the Marlins, they got off to a really bad start. Jeff Torborg, the manager, got fired in May, and right after that, Miguel Cabrera and Dontrell Willis got to the big leagues. And then from that point on, the Marlins were kind of a sneaky, great team, and they were the underdogs going into every series in the postseason. They were kind of the little team that could and beat the Yankees in the World Series. So that was a real fun year, and made lifelong friendships as a result of that. And then, fast forward to 2016 with the Cubs. I think it's weird to say it, but it's similar when you're covering World Series winning teams. When you're with the team every single day, it's really amazing to be around, and it felt very similar. The difference is what surrounds it, and I think it really hit me during the Chicago parade that drew about 5 million people a couple of days after Game 7 in Cleveland. That's something that I'll definitely never forget, and you just realize very deeply how big a deal it was for so many people and generations of Cubs fans, right? That, people went to the cemeteries and, talked to their loved ones who had passed away and weren't able to, see the World Series win because, they had lived an entire lifetime without seeing a Cubs World Championship. So it was incredibly emotional, I think, for everybody, incredibly gratifying. And I think the best part of the Cubs championship was not 4 or 5 years earlier, it was a 100-loss team. So I got to see that thing built really from ground zero, from square one all the way to the promised land. And that's incredibly satisfying. And that's what hopefully I'll get to see here with the White Sox, because it's been a tough go here the last couple of years, but you can really start to see things gel and things come together as an organization. And I think that's the most fun way to do it, because you remember the bad days, and then when you get to the really good days, they feel even better.
Well, yeah, you talked about it and kind of did the transition for us into now your White Sox days. We did want to ask a little bit, how was it like to cover the other side of Chicago, even through this, as you said, this downward stretch that they've been in the last couple of years?
Well, first of all, the organization's been amazing to me. Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner, all the way down. I've just been totally accepted as part of the White Sox family, and it's pretty cool. I was part of a charter National League franchise that started up in 1876 with the Cubs. The White Sox were an original American League team in 1901. I'm a big student of history and certainly baseball history. And so I'm really loving digging into that AL history. So that's where I start. And then I think secondly, doing radio, which I just adore. It's a challenge every night, and I have a great partner, Darren Jackson, and we have a blast every single night. And then I think thirdly, kind of, understanding the different side of the city in terms of, there are a lot of White Sox fans, not just on the South Side. Cubs fans are everywhere. White Sox fans are everywhere. And after I took this job, I would hear from people who live in Northbrook or Lakeview or Lincolnshire, and they're like, hey, my whole family's Cubs fans, but I'm a White Sox fan. Or I'll run into people on the South Side and they'll say, look, everyone around me is a White Sox fan, but I actually root for the Cubs. And, I'm also finding out that there are a lot of people who actually root for both teams, which almost seems like a cardinal sin. But it does happen because the teams are in opposite leagues. They've only matched up in the World Series once, and that was in 1906. So I think it's fair to be able to root for the two teams, and kind of cool, right? So it does give you a different perspective, and I really, really like being a part of the White Sox family, and the fans have been great. They're really smart. They'll boo if they don't like what they're watching in terms of someone doesn't hustle or makes a play they don't like. But if that player does something they like, they'll immediately be back on their good side. So I think White Sox fans really keep everybody honest, and it's been awesome to experience.
And you talked about how you've transitioned from the Cubs and White Sox. You went from television to radio, and we both are going into our second years of calling games ourselves at our radio and TV class. What would you say is the biggest difference between the two mediums, and what changed about your preparation from television to radio?
Well, they're very different. It's like tennis with singles and doubles, same game, but very different strategy. The description on radio is paramount. You're essentially repeating the same facts over and over, and you're trying to keep it fresh and moving forward. It's what's the score, what's the inning, what's the count, what's the base out situation, what's the pitcher doing, what's the batter doing, where's the defense, what's the wind doing, did the sun peek out from behind the clouds, who's the on deck hitter. You're just doing the what and where the ball is all the time. And that's kind of your anchor on radio. On television, you have a lot more choices because you're captioning the pictures. You don't want to call necessarily every pitch or every foul ball. If you're having a conversation, you want to let that flow. But radio, you're kind of always going back to the basics. But again, you don't want it to be boring. You want to make it sound fun and lively and comfortable. So your pacing is really important. And I just, again, I love painting the picture on radio, and there's nothing better than a moment in which you can anticipate something by seeing something, and then it happens. And we really strive to try to be ahead of the action as much as we can, and take the listener with us and kind of paint the picture and let us be their eyes and ears, right? So that part of it I really, really enjoy. Television was great because you have a big crew involved. When you get to put something together that you see and then you can show the viewer and you can explain, that is a really, really fun part of teamwork. But radio is more about just you and your partner and making sure that you don't miss anything, and you describe every little detail as coherently and as artistically as possible.
And you've been able to do that very well, and you've been able to do that while keeping your energy very high even through this rough stretch for the White Sox. So, how are you able to keep your energy so high to make the calls exciting for the fans listening, especially to a club that's struggling like the White Sox?
Well, first of all, it's your job. And while you're a fan as well, the number one thing is that you're the broadcaster first. So, for instance, when there's a tricky play or a weird call by an umpire, your job is to explain it, not to immediately say if you think it's right or wrong. I talk to umpires a lot, and, our job is to try to decipher what actually is happening. That's the first principle of doing what I do. And number two, you reset every day. It's a big league baseball game, and something special could happen at any moment in any game. The White Sox lost a game, I believe the final was 12-2 the other night. Michael A. Taylor made a home run saving catch in right. It was an incredible play. It was in a game in which that catch really didn't matter. But at the end of the day, it's a great baseball play, and it's our job to kind of meet the moment. So I always try to remember those things, and I go back to listening to Ernie Harwell, and you knew the score because he would tell you, but if you just tuned in, no matter when it was, whether it was a 12-2 or a 1-1 tie, or it was the second inning or the 13th inning, his energy was always the same. And I think that's where I really strive to be as often as I can. Nobody wants to listen to someone sound depressed all the time. It's a game. There's a lot of comfort involved with listening to baseball on the radio, and regardless of the score, our job is to be at our best at all moments.
And we were curious, you're talking about being join the White Sox, trying to keep the energy up. The White Sox recently pulled off a trade in early June, mid-June, sending Andrew Vaughn to the Milwaukee Brewers and receiving Aaron Savali. What is any input you can put on that trade?
Well, the White Sox, they have a lot of young starting pitching, so Aaron Savali, a veteran, can come in and kind of help pad that a little bit. Jonathan Cannon's on the injured list right now, so they needed a starter. And I think just to manage innings, you can never have enough veteran arms. Martin Perez was going to take up a lot of innings, but he got hurt early in the year. They brought in Adrian Hauser, and now with the addition of Savali, I just think it's a guy who can go beyond 100 pitches whenever you need him to, and getting to the end of the year in terms of covering innings is really, really important. So I think that's the main reason the White Sox went out and made that deal. And Andrew Vaughn had been at AAA. I think a change of scenery will do him wonders, and I still think he's got a long big league career ahead of him. It's just making those proper adjustments. And again, sometimes you put yourself in a different situation and it can unlock something. So we'll miss Vaughn for sure. Love him as a person and as a player, but I look forward to watching him in a new uniform and seeing how it goes.
And then off the trade situation, how does that change your preparation, especially on a trade that isn't at the deadline where you can kind of expect trades to be happening? How does your preparation change when there's this random early June trade, especially for a guy that seemed like he could have been on the White Sox for a while, like Andrew Vaughn?
It doesn't really change my prep. I'm doing work every day, in season, off season. I've seen Aaron Savali a lot. I had done homework on him. You just do a little more that day, right? And he made his debut in Texas, and so you spend maybe an extra half hour boning up on a new player that you know a little bit about, but maybe don't know everything about. And then over the course of time, over the first couple of weeks, you introduce yourself, you try to get to know a guy, and then you might have a couple questions about their bio that you don't have answered satisfactorily, and you want to make sure you get it right on the air. So it's not a burden at all. It's actually kind of fun because you get into these routines during a season, and sometimes it's nice to break out of that routine a little bit and have something new and fresh.
And then you're talking about just the enjoyment of having all of the play and the ability to continue with the struggles of the team. And back in 2011, the Cubs also were having struggles kind of during then as well. But you received the Harry Carey Sportscaster of the Year award. How was that experience in that award for you?
Oh, it was great. I had a great Sunday night dinner, and I was very humbled, and to get any sort of award for your work is really an honor, but to get an award that has Harry Carey's name on it is even more satisfying. So that was pretty awesome, and it's a team effort, especially doing television. At the time, I was working with Bob Brenly, who's one of the best in the business, and he really helped me when I got to Chicago. He had a lot more experience than I did, and kind of helped bring me along. So I kind of looked at it as a team award, and have that bat with Harry Carey's name on it displayed very prominently in my home office.
Well, that's awesome, and it's very cool that you got to win an award like that. But coming with an award in your years of broadcasting, what has been your favorite moment behind the mic and your favorite moment to call in your entire career as a broadcaster?
I'm asked that a lot. I have so many different moments, and a lot of them are not really broadcasting moments. They're just being there and being able as a fan to witness stuff. But I guess two that stand out are the Ramos Ramirez home run to beat Milwaukee in 2007. That's one people talk about a lot. The Tim Anderson walk-off home run at the Field of Dreams game in 21 in Iowa was one of the greatest regular season moments I've ever witnessed. And I also got to call Miguel Cabrera's first career home run. It was a game-ending homer in extra innings in his big league debut in Florida. And Miguel will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So that one is very special to me because you see that one on Twitter every now and again whenever Cabrera's name is brought up. So those are probably the three that would stand out the most. I've been able to call 5 no-hitters as well. Those are always really fun and tense-filled moments. So, yeah, that's a pretty good list.
That's awesome. And I'm not a White Sox fan, but I always go back and watch that Tim Anderson home run and just that whole 9th inning of that Field of Dreams game. Devon, you got to experience the Field of Dreams game the year after for the Cubs. Obviously, Len, you weren't there for that one, but you both have been to a Field of Dreams game, which is pretty cool. But speaking about your calls, I think I just want to tell you my favorite call of yours is the Javi Baez Mother's Day walk-off in 2016, I think, in the 13th inning against the Washington Nationals. Was one of my favorite moments, and it's always your voice that I hear when I think about the call. So,
yeah, that was a fun one. It was 2015 or 2016. One of those 2 years. 15 was a really fun year too. That kind of gets lost in the shuffle, but that was the first year when everything kind of gelled and got everyone thinking about the World Series. And Javi was so great that year.
And it was very cool. But thank you for your time with us today. Devin and I can't even express how much we'd like to thank you. This was awesome. I mean, as I said, you were my voice of the Cubs for basically my entire life until the last couple years. So I know this was an awesome opportunity for me. Devin started watching the Cubs more recently, but I know he definitely has heard some of the old Cubs calls and thinks you're a great announcer. But we can't even express how much we'd like to thank you, Devin. You'd like to?
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on and talking with us. It was really cool to hear how you've transitioned through going from television to radio and going across the 2 rivalries of the Cubs and White Sox.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. It took a while to get this done, and I'm glad we were able to do it. So anytime, really appreciate it. Good questions, and fun to reminisce a little bit about the old days.
Well, yeah, it's okay. We still got the interview, and it was a joy to have you on. We can't thank you enough. And that'll be all for PC3 Media. I'm Jonny Klumpy, joined by Devin Alsman, and we thank our special guest, Len Kasper, for joining us for this special interview.